The text of the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, or TPP, became public less than 2 weeks ago, and already political battle lines have been drawn. For the United States, it marks President Obama's pivot to Asia, that some have said is as much about geopolitics as it is about trade. Later, we'll hear from both sides of the TPP debate. But for more on the agreement, we turn now to CCTV's Jessica Stone, who joins us from our newsroom. And Jessica, what are some of the key provisions in that deal?
Well, Anand, this agreement is truly historic in terms of its scope. As you've mentioned, 12 countries of varying economic sizes, and it's been touted as the first high-standards trade agreement of the 21st century. Here's a look at the countries which negotiated the agreement: the United States, Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore, and Vietnam. And you can really see when you look at that map how different these nations are from a development standpoint. You know, it's really difficult to boil it all down as it's 6,000 pages long, but here are some of the key parts of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It opens new markets for trade between these 12 Pacific nations, and they account on it for 40% of global economic output. In the United States, the White House says it will lower 18,000 taxes on U.S. exports, and across the trade bloc, it balances labor and environmental standards. Other nations like Korea and the Philippines, they're still examining the agreement. Indonesia has just actually announced that it plans to join. The president did that when he was here in Washington, D.C. And you may note that the second largest economy in the Pacific, it's not part of this agreement. We're talking, of course, about China. China is actually testing some of the tenets of the TPP on a local level to see if they work and see then if it would like to join this agreement. Meantime, the United States is characterizing this as an agreement as a way to set the rules of the regional trade and a way to block China from doing the same, because China also has regional trade pacts it's looking to accomplish. It is, in fact, from the U.S. perspective, the most tangible expression of the American so-called Asia pivot strategy, especially on the economic front, Anand.
Right, and Jessica, as I mentioned, the agreement is not without its critics. What are they objecting to?
Well, American trade unions and other critics, they do not like this deal. They say it'll expose American workers to foreign competition and cost U.S. jobs. U.S. auto parts workers, for example, are particularly vulnerable because of the way the deal is structured for Japanese auto and parts makers. It could even give an in to Chinese parts makers. But at the same time, American automakers, we're talking about the big GM, Ford, those types, they could get new market share in places like Japan, which have really been successful at keeping U.S. automakers out. Other markets like Malaysia and Vietnam stand to benefit. Now, there's also been concern that TPP would allow multinational corporations to use private tribunals to do an end run around national laws and regulations on the grounds that they inhibit trade. Trade ministers, for their part, they say that the agreement would actually prevent, quote, abusive and frivolous claims and ensure the right of governments to regulate in the public interest. We're talking about areas like health, safety, and protection of the environment. So that's still a concern that's out there. And another concern is that TPP does not directly prohibit member nations from using currency manipulation to boost exports. There is a side agreement, though, that was negotiated where nations promise not to do so. But on it, it doesn't have any enforcement mechanism.
Okay, thanks, Jessica. That's CCTV's Jessica Stone reporting.